The world has taught you 1,000 things about who you are supposed to be. It has handed you labels, expectations, identities, roles, and masks. You've been told to act a certain way, speak a certain way, live a certain way, until somewhere along the journey, you started to believe that the roles you play are the truth of who you are. But Alan Watts reminds us of something deeper, something older than any identity you wear. You are not the mask. You are not the stories. You are not the performance. You are the one who is aware of the mask, aware of the stories, aware of the performance. You are not the mask you wear, though life often convinces you otherwise. From the moment you begin to interact with the world, you inherit ideas about who you are supposed to be. You learn quickly that certain behaviors are praised, certain emotions are acceptable, certain dreams are practical, and certain expressions of the self fit more neatly into the expectations of others. Without even noticing, you begin to shape yourself around these expectations. You choose the mask that gets accepted. You polish it. You protect it. You start to mistake it for your actual face. But deep down, something in you senses the difference between the performance and the presence behind the performance. Something in you knows the mask was never meant to define you. Alan Watts reminds us that the mask is simply a tool, not an identity. A role you play in the great theater of life. Roles can shift, masks can be set down, but the one who wears them remains the same. The real you is not the personality you present to the world, not the opinions you defend, not the image you strive to maintain. The real you is the awareness watching all of that happen. The real you is the observer behind the character, the presence that never changes even when everything else does. Think about how easily people become attached to their roles. Someone identifies with being the responsible one, the smart one, the strong one, the quiet one, the popular one, the misunderstood one. These labels become the costume they believe they must wear every moment of their lives. Yet when life challenges that identity even a little, they feel lost, they feel shaken. Why? Because the foundation they built themselves upon was not real. It was an imitation of the self, not the self itself. When the mask cracks, they fear there is nothing beneath it. But the truth is far more profound. Beneath the mask is the real self that has been quietly watching the entire time. You have moments when you glimpse the real you. Moments of silence when the noise of life fades and you feel something spacious, calm, and untouched inside. Moments of presence when you stop pretending, stop performing, stop trying to be anything, and just exist. Moments of authenticity when you act from instinct rather than expectation. In those moments, you're not the mask, you are the awareness behind it. But because you've been conditioned for so long to play the role, you slip back into the costume without thinking. And every time you do, a small part of you feels the weight of pretending. The mask is maintained by fear, the fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of inadequacy. You fear that if you remove the mask, people won't understand you, won't accept you, won't recognize you. But the irony is that the mask is exactly what prevents you from being truly known. It creates distance between who you are and who you appear to be. The more effort you put into upholding the mask, the further you move from your own essence. And the further you move from your essence, the more life feels like a burden. To recognize that you are not the mask is to rediscover your freedom. It means you are not bound to the identities others gave you. You are not limited by the stories you've told about yourself. You are not defined by your past or confined by your mistakes. The real you exists underneath all the layers of performance, untouched by the illusions you've been taught to believe. The mask may help you navigate the world, but it cannot reveal who you truly are. The real you is the presence behind the mask, the awareness that has been silently observing every moment of your existence, waiting for you to finally look inward and remember what has always been there. The real you is pure awareness, a presence that exists before thought, before emotion, before identity. It is the silent witness that has been with you since the beginning, long before you learned your name or formed a single belief about who you are. Most people spend their entire lives identifying with their thoughts and feelings, believing that the stories in their minds define their existence. They say, I am sad, I am anxious, I am confused, as though these temporary states are the core of who they are. But emotions come and go like passing weather, and thoughts rise and fall like waves on the surface of the mind. The real you is not the weather or the waves. The real you is the vast sky behind it all. When Alan Watts speaks of consciousness, he points to this deeper truth, that the essence of who you are is not something that changes, but the space in which all change happens. If you observe closely, you will notice that there is a part of you that never moves, never breaks, never reacts. It simply watches. When you feel joy, something inside observes the joy. When you feel fear, something inside observes the fear. When your thoughts are chaotic or calm, something inside notices them without becoming them. That silent noticing is the real you, the part that is untouched by whatever appears in your experience. Most people are so deeply entangled in their thoughts that they forget this awareness even exists. They assume they are the thinker, But in reality, thoughts arise on their own. They come like clouds floating across the sky without permission, without warning. You do not choose your thoughts, you witness them. You do not generate your emotions, you experience them. And yet you imagine that you are the thinker, the feeler, the identity created from all the mental noise. When you believe this illusion, life becomes heavier because you begin to carry everything as though it belongs to you. But none of it truly does. Thoughts are not you. Feelings are not you. They occur within you, but they are not the essence of your being. To realize that you are pure awareness is to step out of the mental storm and into a state of freedom. Imagine sitting beside a river. The river is your mind, always moving, always shifting, always carrying impressions from the world. But you are not the river. You are the one watching the water flow. This distinction changes everything. When you stop identifying with the flow and start identifying with the watcher, you become calm, grounded, and present no matter what the river carries. Awareness is not something you create. It is something you uncover. It is the background of every experience you've ever had. Even when you were overwhelmed, stressed, or lost, the awareness noticing those emotions remained perfectly still. It has never been harmed by anything you've felt. It has never been damaged by anything you've gone through. It has been the same from your earliest memories to this exact moment. A steady, unchanging presence beneath all the noise of life. When you begin to connect with this awareness, life becomes simpler. You no longer get swept away by thoughts so easily. You no longer cling to emotions as if they are permanent. You begin to experience life as it is, without filtering it through layers of fear and expectation. You start to see that the real you does not need to be improved or perfected. It is already complete. It is already whole. The mind might shout, but awareness remains quiet. The world might change, but awareness remains steady. And once you realize that you are that awareness, not the whirlwind of thoughts around it, you begin to live with a sense of peace that nothing in the external world can take away. Life is a dance, not a problem to be solved, and understanding this changes everything about the way you move through the world. From a young age, you are taught to see life as a series of challenges, obstacles, and goals that must be conquered. You're told that success lies somewhere in the future, and that happiness must be earned through struggle, planning, and control. This mindset makes you tighten your grip on everything: your time, your relationships, your identity, your expectations. You begin to see life as something that must be managed and controlled rather than experienced. But Alan Watts reminds us that life is not a mechanical puzzle with a single correct solution. It is a rhythm, a flow, a dance that you are meant to move with, not dominate. When you see life as a problem, every moment becomes a test. You analyze, worry, strategize, compare, and predict. You fear making mistakes because you believe one wrong move will ruin everything. You cling to the illusion that if you think hard enough and plan perfectly, you can avoid uncertainty and control the outcome. Yet the more you try to control life, the more chaotic it feels. The tighter you hold on, the more life slips through your fingers, because life was never meant to be held. It was meant to be lived. A dance, unlike a problem, has no final destination. No dancer steps onto a stage thinking, I must reach that one spot on the floor. The point of dancing is not to get somewhere, but to express, to feel, to participate in the movement. The beauty is in the motion itself. The same is true of life. You are not here to reach some final point where everything is perfect and complete. You are here to experience the movement, the joy, the sorrow, the uncertainty, the discovery. When you stop treating life like a mission and start treating it like a dance, you release the pressure to be perfect. You open yourself to spontaneity, to flow, to presence. Life is constantly shifting, constantly surprising you, constantly inviting you to move with it rather than resist. Some moments feel like a gentle waltz, smooth and effortless. Others feel like a wild storm, unpredictable and intense. But both are part of the dance. When you surrender to the rhythm, you stop fighting the natural currents of existence. You stop expecting life to fit into your plans and begin to trust that life will guide you, teach you, and carry you if you allow it. Seeing life as a dance also frees you from the fear of failure. In a dance, there are no failures, only movements. Some are graceful, some are clumsy, but all are part of the expression. When you stumble, you keep moving. When you lose the beat, you find it again. There is nothing to prove, nothing to win, nothing to protect. There is only the experience unfolding moment by moment. This mindset transforms the way you approach challenges. Instead of resisting difficulty, you move with it. Instead of fearing uncertainty, you let it shape you. When you stop forcing life to make sense and start flowing with its rhythm, you begin to feel aligned with something deeper than yourself. You feel lighter because you are no longer dragging life behind you like a burden. You feel clearer because you are not lost in constant thought and analysis. You feel more alive because you are participating in each moment instead of rushing through it. This is what it means to live the dance, to be present, to be open, to be engaged without trying to control everything. Alan Watts often said that life is like music. You don't listen to a song just to reach the final note. You listen to enjoy the journey, the melody, the rise and fall. Life works the same way. When you embrace it as a dance, you begin to appreciate each step, each breath, each moment, not as a problem but as a part of the ever-moving rhythm of existence. Your worth is innate, not earned, and this simple truth has the power to free you from a lifetime of unnecessary struggle. From childhood, you are taught to tie your value to achievement, to your grades, your appearance, your behavior, your success, your usefulness. You learn to believe that being worthy means being impressive, productive, perfect, or needed. And without realizing it, you begin to chase approval like a shadow you can never quite catch. Every compliment becomes a lifeline. Every criticism becomes a wound. Every accomplishment feels temporary because it only buys you acceptance for a moment before you must prove yourself again. But Alan Watts reminds us that this entire framework is an illusion. The real you, your consciousness, your presence, your being, was complete and worthy long before the world convinced you otherwise. Imagine for a moment a newborn child. It cannot earn anything, achieve anything, or perform anything. Yet no one looks at a newborn and questions its worth. No one asks, "What have you accomplished?" Or, "What value do you bring?" The worth is inherent because the life is inherent. The same truth applies to you, even though you've forgotten it. Somewhere along the line, you were taught that your worth depends on how much you do or how well you meet expectations. But this belief is rooted in fear, not truth. It is rooted in the idea that you must constantly justify your existence, constantly audition for acceptance, constantly prove yourself worthy of love, respect, and belonging. This constant striving is exhausting because it goes against your nature. When you attach your worth to external things, money, status, beauty, success, or even the opinions of others, you become dependent on forces you cannot control. The moment these things shift, your sense of worth crumbles. You start believing you are not enough unless you are winning, unless you are admired, unless you are achieving something. But those conditions are fragile and ever-changing. If your value rests on them, your identity will always feel unstable. You will always live in fear of losing what makes you worthy in the eyes of the world. But the real you is not defined by achievements or failures. The real you is not diminished by mistakes or elevated by success. The real you is the awareness beneath all of that, and awareness cannot lose value. It simply exists. When you remember that your worth is innate, you stop basing your identity on things that are temporary. You stop trying to impress people who don't truly know you. You stop chasing external validation that never satisfies the longing within. You begin to realize that nothing outside of you can give you something that was already yours from the beginning. This realization doesn't mean you stop striving or growing. It means you stop striving out of fear. You begin to create, achieve, and pursue goals from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. You no longer need success to feel whole. Instead, success becomes an expression of the wholeness you already possess. You no longer fear failure because it no longer threatens your identity. Failure simply becomes another step in your evolution, not a measure of your value. Understanding your innate worth also transforms the way you relate to others. You stop comparing yourself because there is nothing to compare. Everyone is inherently worthy, inherently whole, inherently unique. Competition loses its meaning because worth cannot be ranked. It simply is. You begin to interact with people more authentically, more compassionately, because you no longer need to protect an image or maintain an illusion of superiority. When you embrace the truth that your worth is unconditional, you experience a profound sense of peace. The constant internal battle quiets, the self-criticism softens, the fear of judgment fades. You finally allow yourself to be who you truly are, not because it will earn you love or approval, but because you recognize that you already deserve those things simply by existing. This is the freedom Alan Watts points to, the freedom that comes when you no longer chase worth, but remember it. Your emotions are waves, and you are the ocean beneath them, wide, deep, and unshaken. Yet for most of your life, you have been taught to believe the opposite. You have been taught to think that every emotion must be controlled, resisted, analyzed, or feared. When sadness comes, you identify with it so completely that you say, "I am sad," as if sadness is the entirety of your existence. When anger arises, you believe it defines your character. When anxiety surfaces, you assume it reflects your identity and your future. But emotions were never meant to define you. They were meant to move through you. They are temporary, passing, shifting energies, but the awareness beneath them, your true self, is constant and untouched. Imagine standing at the shore, watching waves rise and fall. Some waves are gentle, barely noticeable. Others are powerful, crashing with force. But no matter how turbulent the surface becomes, the depth of the ocean remains calm. The ocean does not panic when a storm passes overhead. It does not believe the waves will last forever. It does not mistake a moment of turbulence for its entire existence. You, too, have that depth within you. Yet when emotions arise, you forget your depth and begin to identify with the surface. You mistake a passing feeling for a permanent truth. This is why emotional pain feels so overwhelming, because you believe the wave is all you are, rather than something moving across your awareness. Alan Watts often reminded us that resisting emotions only strengthens them. The more you fight a wave, the harder it crashes. The more you cling to a moment of sadness, the longer it lingers. When you fear an emotion, you lock yourself into it. But when you allow it to rise and fall naturally, it dissolves like foam returning to the sea. Your emotions are not your enemies. They are signals, movements of energy, invitations to understand something within yourself. They are meant to be felt, not fought. They are meant to pass, not define. You can observe this truth in your own experience. Think of a moment when you felt overwhelmed by a strong emotion, perhaps grief, jealousy, anger, or fear. In that moment, it felt absolute, as if it would shape your destiny. But now, as you look back, you can see how temporary it was. You can remember that you are still here, still breathing, still yourself. The wave passed. It always does. This is the nature of emotions. They come when they need to come, and they leave when they have passed through your awareness. But the awareness itself does not change. It is the same presence that has watched every emotion you've ever had. It is the same consciousness that has witnessed your joys, your sorrows, your confusion, your clarity. That awareness is the real you. When you recognize yourself as the ocean, not the waves, you no longer fear experiencing emotions. You no longer feel the need to suppress them or drown in them. You allow them to rise naturally, knowing they will fall naturally. This acceptance brings profound peace. It loosens the grip of anxiety and quiets the intensity of sadness. It softens the sharp edges of anger. You begin to understand that emotions are not obstacles, but movements of life expressing themselves within you. This understanding also helps you relate more compassionately to others. When you see someone struggling, you no longer judge them for the waves they are caught in. You recognize that beneath their turmoil is the same depth you have within yourself. You begin to approach people with kindness rather than criticism, patience rather than frustration. You stop taking emotional reactions personally, both your own and those of others. Most importantly, realizing you are the ocean beneath the waves reconnects you with your true self. It grounds you in a sense of inner stability that does not depend on external circumstances. Life may bring storms, but you no longer fear them. You know they cannot reach your core. You know that beneath every wave, no matter how high, there is something calm, spacious, and eternal. Your awareness, your essence, the real you. You are not separate from life. You are an expression of it, an aperture through which the universe looks at itself. This idea, central to Alan Watts' teachings, changes the way you see yourself and everything around you. Most people grow up believing they are isolated individuals living in a world outside themselves. They see themselves as separate from nature, separate from others, separate from the universe. This belief creates fear, loneliness, insecurity, and a constant feeling of needing to protect or prove oneself. But when you look deeper, beneath the identity, beneath the body, beneath the mind, you find something astonishing. The same consciousness that moves through you is the same consciousness that moves through all of existence. You begin to see that you are not a disconnected fragment, but a unique expression of the same universal energy that forms stars, oceans, forests, and every living being. Just as waves belong to the ocean, you belong to the universe. A wave may appear to have its own shape, height, and motion, but it is never separate from the water that creates it. In the same way, you may appear to be an individual with your own personality, story, and experiences, but at your core, you are made of the same essence that gives rise to all life. When you understand this, your perspective begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as small, insignificant, or incomplete. You begin to understand your place in the vastness of existence, not as an outsider, but as an essential participant in the unfolding of life. Alan Watts often emphasized that the universe peoples, just as an apple tree, apples. Humanity is not something separate from nature. It is something nature does. You are a continuation of the same creative force that shapes galaxies and opens flowers. When you breathe, the universe breathes through you. When you think, the universe thinks through your mind. When you feel, the universe feels through your heart. This is why Watts said you are an aperture, a window through which the cosmos becomes aware of itself. You are consciousness experiencing consciousness, life exploring life. Recognizing this dissolves fear, because fear is rooted in separation. When you believe you are alone, vulnerable, and disconnected, you naturally fear loss, failure, judgment, and death. But when you see yourself as part of something infinite, those fears begin to fade. You realize that nothing can truly be taken from you because nothing was ever separate from you. Even the concept of death changes. A wave may crash back into the ocean, but it never stops being water. Likewise, when your physical form dissolves, your essence returns to the source it came from. This understanding brings peace, not in a philosophical sense, but in a deep, felt sense of belonging. Seeing yourself as the universe experiencing itself also changes how you relate to others. You begin to see the same consciousness in their eyes that lives within you. You understand that their struggles, emotions, and dreams are not separate from yours. Compassion becomes natural, not because you try to be kind, but because you recognize yourself in them. You no longer feel the urge to judge, compete, or compare, because comparison only makes sense when you think you are separate. When you see others as reflections of the same essence, connection becomes effortless. This understanding also inspires creativity. When you realize you are the universe expressing itself in human form, you stop limiting yourself. You stop doubting your potential. You understand that creativity is not something you force, it is something that flows through you, as naturally as sunlight flows through a window. The ideas, passions, and inspirations that arise within you are not random. They are expressions of the same universal intelligence that designs everything in existence. Ultimately, realizing that you are the universe experiencing itself frees you to live fully. You no longer shrink yourself to fit into societal expectations. You no longer search outside for meaning. You no longer fear the unknown. You begin to live with a sense of wonder, curiosity, and presence. You move through the world with ease, knowing you are part of something vast, timeless, and extraordinary. You are not separate from life. You are life, aware of itself, unfolding through the miraculous form that is you.